Thousands of essential workers like doctors and nurses, grocery store clerks, and bus drivers have gotten sick and died from coronavirus. So what's being done to protect these workers that we all rely on? Joining us now is David Michaels. He's the former and longest serving head of OSHA. That's the federal agency that assures safe and healthy working conditions. He is now a professor at George Washington University School of Public Health. Professor Michaels, it's great to have you here. OSHA, as we understand it, is tasked with, protecting these workers and making sure that they're not in hazardous situations. And so what grade do you, as a professor, give to how OSHA has handled this coronavirus pandemic?
Allison, it's disheartening, but I would give OSHA an F. OSHA is simply missing in action in handling this epidemic. 12 weeks ago, safety and health experts said OSHA should be issuing emergency standards to make sure workers are protected, first in healthcare and then all these other essential workers. And OSHA still hasn't done it. OSHA has been invisible in this whole response.
Well, what should OSHA be doing? I mean, because you were there for so long, what can they be doing to protect the workers that I described?
Well, first, it's got to come down from the top, but not just OSHA. President Trump has failed. He's not made the order to employers to protect workers and to tell OSHA to get out there and very vociferously, prominently say to every employer, here are rules that you must follow. And those rules should be the CDC guidelines. But OSHA is not saying that employers have to follow those rules. OSHA is saying nothing, and CDC is saying employers should follow those rules. And that makes a big difference. The other thing OSHA needs to be doing is making it very clear to every employer that you can't fire people, you can't retaliate against workers for raising safety and health concerns. And there have been workers fired, from security guards to emergency room doctors, for complaining about lack of safety. And that is against the law. That we haven't heard President Trump or Secretaries of Labor Eugene Scalia or anybody from OSHA out there saying, we will go after you if you fire workers for protecting their own safety.
You brought up Labor Secretary Scalia, and he seems more focused on making sure that workers aren't getting too much unemployment benefits, too many unemployment benefits. I mean, he's talked more about how workers should be working instead of collecting benefits.
That's right. This administration should be laser focused on making sure workers are safe because, look, it's not just hospital workers, but everybody from farm workers to meat plant workers to grocery store workers, bus drivers. If they're not safe, if they get sick, the economy is going to collapse further and we're not going to be able to recover. We need them to be safe. And that OSHA's job is to make sure every one of their employers follows clear rules, makes sure that when they're working, there's 6 feet between every worker and other workers and the public, that workers have access to sanitation, to running water and soap, basic things. This is not rocket science. But again, OSHA, Secretary Scalia are just, they've abdicated. They're missing in action.
We've had some very heartbreaking stories on here with the families of workers who have died. And some of them, have really stuck with us. One of them is a woman named Leilani Jordan. She was just 27 years old. She was a grocery store clerk in Maryland. And it was her parents' strong impression that her employer was not providing her with the protection that she needed, that she had a hard time getting a mask, and she had a hard time getting gloves, and she had a hard time getting hand sanitizer. The grocery store chain has disputed some of that. But for people like Leilani, whose responsibility is it for her to get all of that? Her family's, the grocery store, OSHA? How could that have done better?
It is or was Leilani's employer's responsibility to make sure that she's safe at work. That's what the law says. And OSHA's job and President Trump's job is to make sure every employer does that. And that's simply not happening. But if we're telling people to wear masks when they go out, and we're telling workers to wear masks, it's up to the employer to make sure everybody has a mask and they have enough time to do what they need to do to make sure they're safe, to take breaks, to wash their hands, to wear gloves. Every employer has to do that, and it's OSHA's job to make sure employers follow those rules. it's interesting. Washington State OSHA, which is a separate OSHA overseen by the federal OSHA, but with great independence, Washington State OSHA has said that very clearly. They said these are the rules, and if employers don't follow them, they can be issued fines. They could be taken to court. Federal OSHA needs to do that.
Really interesting to hear how it's supposed to work. David Michaels, thank you very much for all of your expertise.
Well, thank you, Allison.
President Trump claims he has total authority over the decision to reopen states. What does the Constitution